Very good. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. Today is Monday, August 24th. Sorry, I jumped to December. So just a quick housekeeping. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the school districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the board administrative offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and TAP. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind doing a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Gilfillan. Here. Mr. Arnick. Here. Ms. Ciccarelli. Here. Ms. Clark. Here. Ms. Kenny. Here. Mr. Ryan. Mr. Smith. Here. Mr. Valenti. Here. And Ms. Weber.
Here. 8
present and accounted for.
Thank you. If you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I don't have any initial board comments. Presidents, I'd like to get right to it. I will have some at the beginning of the public comments, so I just want to get right to the most important business at hand, so I'm going to pass it right over to you, Dr. LaSousa.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. I just figured I sent an update on the status of the reopening of schools toward the end of last week. And as I'm sure everyone here is aware, there are a lot of school districts that are moving to an all-virtual start to the school year. And some of those districts are very nearby to us. So I wanted to just elaborate on a couple of items that I mentioned in my email to parents and to staff, and to give a status on where they are as we look to opening the schools. And the bulk of this presentation actually will be given by Ms. Grant, because she's going to get into the leave entitlements that largely were enacted in the spring of last year by the federal government. And that's what is really at the heart of the work that still needs to be done in order to be in a position to open the schools. So having said that, I'll just mention a couple of the items that are still posing challenges to us. So on the good news front, we have received all of our face shields, and we've distributed them to about half the buildings. The last shipment came in today, and they're heading to our other schools. So that's a good thing. What we have not received yet, and what we expect to receive this week in a quantity of about 4,000, are desk shields. And I just want to mention, I didn't go into depth about this, but the reason we need the desk shields is that the road back guidance from the Department of Education required school districts to space student seating 6 feet apart, but then went on to say when 6 feet apart was problematic or impossible, districts could undertake other measures to slow the spread of virus. And those measures include erecting physical barriers and changing the desks so that they're all facing the same direction. So we have turned all of the desks in the same direction where we have desks, but in some classrooms we have tables. And in my conversations back in early July with our departments of health, they recommended that we needed the physical barriers of the desk shields. The face shields weren't good enough in their opinion, and we had to have the desk shields. So the reason why we're waiting on the desk shields is that we need them in order to comply with what our Department of Health officials told us. If we weren't to have desk shields, and there are many districts that are not going with physical barriers, the way you get to not go with physical barriers is you just have to then achieve the 6 feet of space. And for us, because of the size of our classes and the size of our classrooms, in order to get to 6 feet without physical barriers, we'd have to reduce the number of students in our schools by a much greater degree. So instead of cutting the number in half at the middle school and high school, we'd have to move down to 25 or 33%, and ditto at the elementary schools where we plan to have students in school each day. That actually, though, is fairly straightforward and simple to resolve. We just need the desk shields to arrive. We need to distribute them and set them up in all of our classrooms, and we should be in a good position. the more challenging issue that we're dealing with and that all districts are dealing with right now, and I've been on the phone literally day and night every day of the week with superintendents in other districts, is that we're all experiencing a tremendous, tremendous stress on staffing and the ability to staff our schools with the requisite teachers we need to supervise children. And the reason for that has to do, as I said, with federal entitlements that Ms. Grant is going to talk about, but also with the way New Jersey has approached the reopening of schools. So I just want to kind of provide this for context before I turn it over to Ms. Grant. Many of us in my position were begging for some decision-making from our Department of Education back in April and May. At the time, in April and May, we were most focused on summer programming, especially for our special education learners and our extended school year students. But we were also clamoring for guidance or decision-making about coming back to school, because May and June is usually the time frame when we're building master schedules, we're hiring staff, we're appointing people into positions, we're ordering what we need to open a school. So we were pressing for that, and it came on June 26th in the form of 104 pages of guidance that largely was flexible and took the position that school districts needed maximum flexibility in order to do what was best for their particular community. And as I wrote in my newsletter or my letter to parents last week, many of us indicated at the time that if every school district was left to its own devices to open for 180 days of instruction, which was a requirement, that every school district would come up with a different schedule unless the state dictated or directed in some way what kind of parameters we had to exercise. So just as an example, there are other countries where they have decided that elementary students come back to school every day, but secondary students don't do that. They stay virtual or they stay on a hybrid type of schedule. We didn't have that happen in New Jersey. And so the result was that the DOE said 4 weeks out from the start of the school year, districts have to announce what their plans are, whatever they might be. Before we reached this point today, there were then 3 amendments to the DOE road back guidance. The first one came on July 20th, and I want to explain this too, because there's been some confusion about it, and I've received emails from parents about it. Prior to July 20th, there were school districts, just like us, but not in our county, who had decided that they were going to allow parents to opt for virtual instruction. If the parents didn't feel comfortable with sending their child to a school, the parents could opt for virtual instruction and the district would find a way to provide it. In other parts of the state, superintendents were being told by DOE officials that they were not allowed to do that, and that if a parent wanted virtual instruction, the parent needed to disenroll their child and go find it on their own. Or the parent could supply medical documentation to place the child on home instruction and receive 10 hours of instruction a week as per home instruction policies. The reason that changed on July 20th is that a number of superintendents petitioned the DOE for further clarification and explained that we needed to supply parents with this kind of option because it would really lead to problems if we tried to make every student disenroll from a public school district in order to go virtual. 2 weeks later, the next addendum or the next change in the guidance was that students were now required to wear face coverings. Originally, that was just something that was encouraged or strongly recommended, but it wasn't required. And then we get to August 12th. And I'm putting this in black and white because I'll let you know that on August 11th, 30 superintendents, other superintendents, and I had a meeting with some DOE officials, and we were told at the time, accurately, that we did not have the ability to open up in an all-virtual model, that that was not an option, at least at that time. We were told that that could change, that the governor was considering making a change, but as of August 11th, school districts were not permitted to choose an all-virtual opening. The next day on August 12th, obviously Governor Murphy allowed that. And the reason that this has created so many problems, and the reason why we are up to 150 or however many districts now across New Jersey that have chosen to go virtual or who have really been forced to go virtual, is that we are all struggling with the leaves that are provided in the federal legislation. So we have two types of leaves that Ms. Grant is going to discuss now. We have those involving health considerations and those involving childcare considerations. The health considerations we've known from the beginning of the summer. I think I sent my first update this summer on July 2nd, if I remember right. But these are for obviously staff members who might have an age that puts them at greater, that are of an age that puts them at greater risk for COVID-19 or of some other underlying health condition. And Ms. Grant and her office works with those staff members. It frequently involves some period of time, she'll get into this, when they can speak with their physicians and they can kind of come up with a plan of action. And of course, there are accommodations that we then provide based on what their needs are. And the accommodation that has entered into the framework here often is a leave of absence for a period of time. On the other hand, a new entitlement that came about in the spring in response to COVID is that childcare leaves can happen, or employees can take advantage or take a childcare leave if their children's school is closed because of COVID-related reasons. And what's happened now since certain school districts announced that they were not in a position to open because they were lacking staff, and B, since Governor Murphy allowed school districts to choose an all-virtual option, is that more school districts all around New Jersey are going with the all-virtual option because they don't have enough staff for their schools. So I'm sure everyone knows, or many of us are aware of this if we're following it. Just today, West Caldwell announced it was going all virtual. Friday, it was Mount Olive. Thursday, it was Milburn. Wednesday, it was Livingston. I can go on and on. There are many school districts that are opening in an all virtual model. And when that happens, of course, the conversations that Ms. Grant and I are hearing they go something like this. Mike, I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. In July, my district announced that they would attend school on the same days, 2 days 1 week, 3 days next week, 2 days the week after, 3 days the week after, 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, 3 days. My mother-in-law usually watches our children, but she's 81 and she has several underlying health conditions. We can't rely on her anymore. And my husband has such and such job where he has no control over his schedule. So when my district announced they were going to go 2 days 1 week, 3 days the next, I found a college student who was willing to watch my kids, and I thought I could patch through. But then 3 days ago, my district announced it was all virtual, and I'm in a bind right now. I have no options. I don't know what to do. I'm considering taking a leave of absence. And that's what is the dynamic. That's the dynamic that we're facing. So Ms. Grant's going to kind of get into the details there. But the conclusion of all of that, where this leads, is that right now we're receiving these leave inquiries. Ms. Grant and her team is managing these leave requests, and we're trying to fill positions that are vacant. We feel that we have a really good shot, and we are in a better position than many other districts in that we should be able to fill the vast majority of these vacancies. Some of them we're filling tonight. Some of them we filled at the last meeting. Some of them we expect to fill this coming week, and that we will be in a position as a result to open our schools 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks from tomorrow, I should say. At the same time, though, it's been unpredictable which districts are closing and opening all virtually, and that is putting new inquiries and new potential leaves on the table literally every single day that goes by. Sometimes every hour that goes by in a given day, we're hearing from different staff members. So we're managing through that as best we can. We're trying to be as expedient as we can. This will kind of be my last thing before I turn over to Ms. Grant. One of the struggles that we're having is something we've talked about at this board numerous times over the years, which is there's a national teacher shortage. Since the Great Recession, what's been happening is that fewer teaching candidates are entering graduate and undergraduate schools of education. Fewer schools are graduating teaching candidates, and especially in certain subject areas like world language, mathematics, special education, science, there are not very many teaching candidates. So what's happening in New Jersey at the moment is that districts are starved for teachers. When we offer a teacher a job for one of these positions, the teacher often has 3, 4, 5 different offers and turns us down more frequently than is typical. So we've had numerous candidates where we offer them the job, they need to take a day or two about it, then they decline. And then we're back to the drawing board trying to fill positions. So we're making progress, as I say. We are not in a place right now where we have to close, but if we're faced with a continuing increase in the number of leave inquiries and potential leaves, we could be in a different position a week from now or 10 days from now or what have you. So with that, I'll let Ms. Grant get into the technicalities, and then I'll wrap up a little bit after that.
Thank you, Dr. LaSousa. So I'd like to review some of the leave entitlements that employees of this district are able to utilize for various needs. The first, and likely the most recognizable, being the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is the federal, the New Jersey Family Leave Act, and then we'll spend the most time, of course, on the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which is inclusive of 2 components, the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act and the Emergency Family Leave Expansion Act. So the FMLA was enacted in the early 90s with its primary function to allow employees to take leave for certain eligibility reasons that could allow up to 12 weeks of leave with job protection along with health benefits protection. And so effectively what it does is allows an employee, if they meet these eligibility criteria, to be absent from work for a period of up to 12 weeks and not have to worry about their employment, and with the understanding that their health benefits coverage will continue. In the state of New Jersey, we have our own version of a Family Leave Act. Not every state has this, but we do in New Jersey, and there are certain similarities to the federal, and then there are differences. So I'm going to sort of toggle back and forth here between the two. The FMLA, the federal, it requires that an employee, the baseline eligibility is that an employee has worked a minimum of 1,250 hours in the 12 months preceding the leave. The New Jersey Family Leave Act requires that an employee has worked 1,000 hours in the preceding 12 months. The family leave allows for up to 12 weeks of leave in a 12-month period, while the New Jersey Family Leave Act allows for up to 12 work weeks in a 24-month period. The primary difference here is that the federal leave, it allows an employee to take leave for their own serious medical condition. It also, the federal allows for an employee to take leave to care for a family member who is having a serious medical condition, among other reasons. The New Jersey Family Leave Act does not have a provision for an employee to take leave for their own serious medical condition. One last note here in terms of the interplay between the New Jersey Act versus the federal is that it very specifically requires that if both laws are being utilized for the same reason, they will run concurrent, thereby allowing for up to 12 weeks of leave for a given reason and not stackable into 24 weeks except for very specific circumstances. Just to give you sort of a sense of how these entitlements are used here in our district, primarily they are used by staff members who are bonding with a newborn and or bonding with an adopted child, both scenarios within 1 year of that event. So then we move on to this brand new entitlement, which went into effect April 1, 2020, that is set to expire at the end of calendar year 2020. This is an obvious answer to the current pandemic, and it allows for certain leave entitlements. So again, I'm going to go back and forth here, beginning with the first component of the FFCRA, which is the Emergency Paid Sick Leave. So there are various reasons that trigger eligibility under the emergency paid sick leave. There is an employee rights poster that many of you may have been familiar with. It outlines the eligibility reasons and then, based on those reasons, indicates what the actual entitlement is. So as you'll see, the first three reasons, which are very straightforward, whether you are subject to a state, federal, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19, if you have been advised by your healthcare provider to self-quarantine for any reason related to COVID-19, or if you are experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and are seeking a medical diagnosis. So all of these three reasons immediately require you to miss work, and so therefore the emergency paid sick leave is triggered. With these three eligibility reasons, you could be eligible for up to 100% of your pay. With everything that the FFCRA provides, there are caps, which I've noted on the slides. In certain circumstances, when you meet this eligibility reason, if you are an employer who has access to paid leave time that could appropriately be applied, if you are exceeding the daily cap, you could apply sick leave to bring you to 100% pay for the period of emergency paid sick leave. The next two eligibility reasons differ a bit. So the first is caring for an individual that is subject to the same identifiers in reason one, subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine. Or if you yourself are experiencing any other similar conditions as specified by the Department of Health and Human Services, and that is similar conditions to COVID-19. So in these two eligibility reasons, you could be eligible for up to 2/3 of your pay to a maximum of $200 per diem. And then the final eligibility reason.
The daily and the aggregate.
So the payroll would occur through the district, and then it is likely to be reimbursed under the CARES Act. Now, whether or not that's tax credit or dollar-for-dollar reimbursement, we will determine. And then the final reason, which is obviously the most impactful to the conversation here tonight, is that in terms of the emergency paid sick leave, there is a qualifying reason that allows you eligibility if you are faced with the unavailability of childcare due to COVID-19 related reasons. And again, the allowance is for up to 2/3, 67% of your pay to the maximum cap for a period of up to 2 weeks. The unavailability of childcare has two provisions that it address. The FFCRA addresses two provisions that are pointed to the unavailability of childcare. So the emergency paid sick leave of up to 2 weeks for the reduced pay, followed by an expansion to the FMLA. So in my first slide, we talked about the FMLA and its longstanding practice and its eligibility for certain reasons to take leave for up to 12 weeks. What the Emergency Family FMLA Act does is it increases the eligibility reasons by one, which is the unavailability of childcare. So I'll probably mention this a couple of times as we speak through this, but it's important to note that the EFMLEA is not an additional leave entitlement, but rather expands the reasons for which you can be approved under FMLA leave. Additionally, there is a 10-week component of pay at the reduced rate up to $200 for that period of 10 weeks to a maximum of $10,000. We have a number of staff members who are likely going to be utilizing this entitlement. So the breakout, as I've displayed in the slide here, is just to revisit again the first 2 weeks payable under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, and the following 10 weeks to be partially paid under the FMLA. Now, technically speaking, the FMLA, which allows for up to 12 weeks, in the context of the FFCRA, the first 2 weeks of those 12 weeks are unpaid. So it is an option of the staff member to either elect the emergency paid sick leave to provide pay for those first 2 weeks. If you are an employee who has paid leave time that can appropriately be supplemented, so for example, if you are a 12-month employee who is entitled to vacation leave, you might determine that vacation leave is what you'd want to supplement for the first 2 unpaid weeks. Generally, 10-month employees, the only option they have if they choose to not take the first 2 weeks unpaid would be to supplement with the 2 weeks of emergency paid sick leave with eligibility, of course, according to the reason of the unavailability of childcare. Leaves for the unavailability of childcare are primarily what we have been dealing with to present, which Dr. LaSousa mentioned. Second to that is individuals or employees who have been deemed increased vulnerable to illness due to COVID-19. Under these circumstances, an employee might seek medical certification indicating what potential reasonable accommodations the district might be able to supply in order to allow that employee to meet the essential functions of his or her assignment. Under the interactive process, which is a function of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we engage in this process to try to determine these reasonable accommodations. In the context of illness due to COVID-19, it is not uncommon to find that the only reasonable accommodation is an approval of a leave of absence. Again, a leave of absence relative to COVID-19, certain symptoms, anything in the context of COVID-19 would, again, trigger the first 2 weeks of pay under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act at 100%, followed by, if leave is still required, if the symptoms persist and you require a leave of absence, you would be eligible to use your own sick leave, accumulated sick leave, and then, of course, additional leave of up to 12 weeks under the FMLA. Just to give a sense of where things stand specific to these entitlements, as of this moment, and because of timing, because the leaves due to increased vulnerability to COVID-19 had been brought forward much sooner, we are at an approval count of 16 staff members who are anticipating leave due to increased vulnerability. And then at present, there are 10 staff members who are going to utilize their leave entitlement under the expanded FMLA. That number is 10 at this point. And then the last bullet here is just in order to provide a sense of individuals, employees in the district who have in one way or another expressed concerns about their ability to begin employment in the start of the academic year, either due to childcare conflicts, concerns, the unavailability of, and or experience or have underlying conditions or are deemed increased vulnerable to COVID-19. And that number at this moment in time is 100 staff members greater than. And then lastly are the resources which are widely available for employees to review and understand the entitlements.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. So the first question that every superintendent is facing right now is, can I safely supervise kids in my schools? That's the first foundational responsibility that we have as school districts. We act as in loco parentis. That means in place of parents, a legal and Latin term. That means that we become the guardian of the parents when they're in our charge. When parents discharge their children to us and we take charge of them during a school day, we have to be able to responsibly and effectively supervise them and keep them safe. So at the current time, what school districts are experiencing is an analysis and a changing landscape every day because of the fact that different districts are announcing that they're going virtual at different points. This fundamental goal and task in front of us of making sure that our buildings are effectively staffed so that we have proper supervision and appropriate instruction and care for children. So that's the first question, right? And some districts have answered that question by saying we can't. We don't feel confident that we can appropriately supervise students, therefore we must close. Other districts like us feel that at the current moment, or at least if we project out a week or so, that we can, given what we know right now, the number 10 and the number 16 on that slide right before, those definitive leaves, we think that we can fill most of them in a way that enables us to appropriately supervise students and deliver instruction to them. The 100 is what we're clearing through, and to be sure, not all of those will turn into leaves. That some of those are just inquiries based on what happens if X occurs in my own child's district or my own child's daycare situation. What happens if someone in my family tests positive for COVID and I have to be quarantined? Those are some of the questions that we're dealing with. So the next kind of set of questions that people might be asking are, well, is it even worth it? Is it worth opening the schools if you don't have 100% of your teachers available and students also are wearing masks and it's a different environment than we've had in the past? And I just want to mention again, I've talked about this kind of thing before, but the CDC updated its guidance again just last week on Friday, I think it was. And the CDC echoes the American Academy of Pediatrics in laying out for school districts that they really need to weigh the risk of COVID-19 to students against all of the other potential harmful outcomes that occur when school districts are closed. And I've put in bold one of the statements up there, the harms attributed to closed schools on the social, emotional, and behavioral health, economic well-being, and academic achievement of children. And the CDC goes on to highlight, in particular, certain areas that in-person schooling addresses better than virtual schooling. And you can see them up there: educational instruction, the development, supporting the development of social and emotional skills, creating a safe environment for learning, addressing nutritional needs, and providing for physical activity. So the answer to some of these questions right now for me is that at the current moment, and especially projecting out about a week, I believe we will be sufficiently staffed if we don't have lots of other changes around us in school districts that are nearby. I believe that we will be in a place where, if we look at our K through 5 setting, we'll be able to have a certified teacher in every homeroom. Probably close to 90% of those teachers will be teachers that were with us in June, and 10% will be teachers who might be new because they are they're long-term leave replacements, appropriately certified, filling in for teachers who were unable to be with us when we open in 2 weeks. At the 6-12 level, we will also probably have, I think, if things don't change and we hustle and keep on working on the leaves of absence, a situation where we have 90% or more of the teachers we had in June ready to start the year, and 10% though potentially not certified teachers in that given subject area. And we will have to be creative with having some long-term replacements. We may have to be creative with having substitutes and students who are logging into Eduseer or some other online platform for one of their courses, let's say, out of the 7 that they might take. I believe that what I just described, though, there's enough value in that, and it's better than just saying all the students will be virtual and not set foot in a school. That's my belief. I think that the gains and the benefits to having students in school, even if it's not perfect, and even if we have some staff members that are close to impossible to replace, that outweighs shutting the schools down altogether for pure virtual instruction. Now, again, we might be at that place in 10 days. We might not have a choice, but have to close and begin the year in all virtual instruction. But that's something that we're working very hard to avoid having to do. And our goal remains to open 2 weeks from tomorrow with the plans that we've communicated to the community, and keep moving day by day and try to get in as much time as we can in the in-person model of schooling. So that's the summary of where we are at the current moment, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
leaving, are we basically having them commit to a full year of leave? So we're not going to have.
I didn't hear the first part.
When they go for this furlough or the leave, whatever you want to call it, is it a commitment to be gone for the whole year?
So the childcare leave is a maximum of 12 weeks. The medical leaves vary based on input from the physician. We've been seeing partial year, and then we do have a handful of full year leaves.
Okay, so there's going to be disruption during the year in terms of kids having different teachers instead of a consistent teacher potentially across the year. Next question is, say we go virtual, does all this disappear? We're hiring all these teachers, these replacements. If we go virtual and everyone can do it virtually, what is the recourse at that point? Do we just say, sorry, you picked your furlough and your leave and you just have to wait till it unwinds and then you can come back in that position?
So this is a question that comes up quite often. When we hire leave replacements, dependent upon the duration of service, those individuals are hired under contract. Those contracts would contain a separation clause. So from a technical standpoint, we would have to potentially break contracts. It would all depend. We'd have to have some form of reasonable assurance that if the district was temporarily put back into remote instruction, that if in X number of weeks we were able to resume on-site instruction, that the individual would then be able to return on-site, because otherwise it would be significant disruption to be going back and forth between leave replacement teacher and our regular teacher.
Okay. And then Pete, what is our absolute financial exposure? It appears as though we pay and then we hope we get paid back on this stuff?
As Ms. Grant commented, the district will be paying the employees that go on the FERCA leave and obviously paying the replacements. There hasn't been an avenue yet to apply for refunds on what you paid for FERCA.
So what's our excess spend on this?
Haven't fully calculated it all
And is-
since all of the leaves aren't in yet.
And then we'll have to assume that it's basically offset because we're bringing in, it's kind of a quasi-breakage figure where we could see it offset by having lower priced teachers fill most of those positions.
Yes, because under the FERCA, you either get a maximum of $511 a day or $200 a day, which hopefully paying someone at the BA2 or the BA3 salary, plus the FERCA amount is less than someone who's making the higher salary.
Okay, so
That's
you're not
more
worried about it.
experienced teacher.
It's not a stress financially.
It hopefully will not be.
Yeah, Matt, I would just answer that by saying if the CARES Act works the way it's supposed to, we would not be on the hook. We would be reimbursed for the staff members taking the child care leave of absence, and there's a maximum amount, so it actually is only a percentage of their normal salary. On the medical leave or the health-related leaves, those individuals, many of them are taking earned time. So they're taking sick days that they've accumulated over a period of time. Obviously, because one of the conditions is age, we have some staff member who've been here for many decades, and they have plenty of sick days available to them. So they can be out for a full year on paid leave, and I don't think that's reimbursed in the same way, although I could be wrong about that.
Sorry, Sal, just real quick, can we keep track, I don't know if this is a business call or an HR combination, if down the road there's some opportunity to be reimbursed for out-of-pocket expenses where we have to pay for substitutes, if the governor comes up with money, if there's federal money to be had, I just want to have an accurate accounting of how much we're out of pocket if there's an opportunity to recoup some of that. Because we're going to be, fortunately, not as hard hit as some other districts.
Right.
That will ask for reimbursement. I do not want to miss the boat because we don't have the correct documentation for that.
And right now, there is no avenue, because the CARES Act, the first round of the CARES Act was for districts that got Title I, which we did not get any funding in. The second round of the CARES Act has already been submitted.
Right.
And we basically used that for a little bit of adjustment of instruction and for supplies that we purchased.
Yeah,
So-
understood. But you know what I'm saying, keep track of it, because if CARES Act round number 57 comes around, I want our piece of that pie.
We will. We're working with the software company to set up certain codes so that when the person is paid through FERCA, it's all tracked and accounted for.
Okay.
Are we operating under the assumption that, if all 126 staff leave, we're roughly 80% capacity, that we can operate virtually with 80% capacity, or that some of those 100 staff members will be able to work in a virtual capacity?
It's a great question. So this is kind of the catch-22. The catch-22 is the reason to go virtual, in my mind, is that you are so short on teaching staff that you need to go virtual in order to bring some of those staff back in, because you haven't been able to replace them. If you bring those staff back in, so let's just say we have a French teacher and a Spanish teacher who there's no chance we will replace in this time frame. We go virtual and we bring them back in. Whenever we return to the physical school environment, then at that point they have not exhausted any leave because they've been working virtually. Then they, if nothing changes, they would have to take leave at that time. And if nothing changes on our end in terms of the magic pot of teachers that, you know, graduating from colleges and universities in September, then we're going to still be short on being able to fill those positions, and they're going to have their full allotment of leave at their disposal, potentially. So my feeling is that if you begin the year virtually and you're doing that in order to recapture the teachers that you can't replace, there's quite a likelihood that you will not be able to reopen down the road.
You had a question?
I'm going to pass, and I may approach you offline.
Could always hit Matt up first. I'm only kidding. Does anybody else have any questions? We've been working on this pretty much since March 13th. I mean, in all seriousness, we talked about it as early as May. I distinctly remember Michelle Clark saying, I can't talk about this. I got to get through the year. That can't possibly happen that we're having this conversation. But we've been talking about this seriously since May. What's school going to look like? What if we have to go back virtual? What if we can't get everybody in the building? So, you know, when people say, what have you been doing? This is what we've been doing. We've been working on this night and day, all hands on deck. Every teacher, every administrator, every supervisor, this is what they've been doing pretty much 20 hours, a day. In their sleep, they come up with ideas. This has not been something that Mike just worked on since the governor decided to change move the cheese on us. The entire staff has been working on this since May. So when folks ask us, what have you been doing? This is what we've been doing. Mike, did you have additional comments?
No, I don't think so. On that point, though, I'll say, of course, we've been working on our virtual programming for months now, but that doesn't mean the fact that we were directed that we had to open schools. We've been expending resources and time and energy to do everything we can to be in a position to open school physically, not just because we believe it's the best thing to do, but because we were directed up until 10 days ago that we had to do it. So we've expended a lot of resources in that direction, and we've been trying to expend resources in other directions as well, recognizing that everything could change on a dime, and there was always quite a chance that we could end up in a pure virtual model at the beginning of the year. So we're trying to walk and chew gum and kick the can and do everything else at the same time, but this has taken a lot of resource allocation up because of the way that we were told we needed to operate for about 2 months or 7 weeks or whatever it was before it changed.
And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. There's no way around it. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a Steven Spielberg production when we're live streaming the class. It's not going to happen. But what we can tell you is everybody is working their absolute hardest to make it the best it possibly can. I can't say it any more simply than that. Nobody's a slacker. Nobody doesn't want to do their job. Everybody's working as hard as they can, and we're going to make it as best we can. It will not be perfect, period.
I have a quick question about the face shields. Am I supposed to press this, Connor?
It's on.
Okay. So I want to make sure it's clear that the face shield is just an additional layer of protection, that students and staff are required to wear masks, and the face shield is not in place unless otherwise specified or medically documented. Is that correct?
We purchased the face shields, and I originally was hoping that the face shields would qualify for just a barrier, and we didn't need the desk shields, because the face shields are $2 and the desk shields are $28. But the departments of health felt otherwise. They said the face shields are a nice to have, but they're not the same as a bigger physical barrier. So the face shields we are going to provide for anyone who wants them. They're totally voluntary. The Department of Health ultimately, in our last round of conversations a few weeks back, said that with desk shields, they can be just as effective if you put them on every other desk, because you're creating the same type of barrier between each individual. And that if a student was wearing a face shield and a face covering, then we didn't need to have them at a space with a desk shield. Just, they thought that with desk shields at least every other seat and a student in a face covering and a face shield, that would be sufficient. So we're not requiring every student to wear a face shield.
Right, but we are requiring a mask. So if a student
Yes,
puts on a face
mask
shield,
is
the mask must be
correct.
on. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
And just to be clear, there's going to be a desk shield at every desk also, right? You're not going to require kids to sit at a desk without a shield and wear a mask plus a
Correct.
face shield, right?
Correct. If we are short on the desk shields because one of our orders is delayed, the Department of Health has said that every other desk would suffice for their, from their point of view in terms of the safety and the physical barriers. But the goal will be to have one at every workspace.
Thank you.
Okay. No additional questions, comments? Peter, do you want to take us through?
Sure. Just a brief construction update. For the CMS nurses restroom, the contractor is working. They should begin their tiling tomorrow, and has been mandated that by the latest needs to finish by Friday the 28th. And this way the school will have the ability to have the office and be able to set it up for the week prior to the children coming to school. On the auditorium, the middle school auditorium, the final inspection was Friday the 21st. There were a few issues that are predominantly paperwork that are currently working on to be resolved, so that the Madison Building Department can issue the CO. And temporary railings were installed. The railings and grills should be delivered sometime this week. The contractor will replace those as soon as he gets them. And that's all I have for now.
Okay. Any questions for Peter? No? Okay, great. We're going to move on to committee reports. Ann, for personnel?
Yes, we met just prior to this meeting and discussed all that we just discussed with you, pretty much. So, just the ongoing leave replacements and various personnel issues that we're struggling with to get school open. And can't tell you when we'll meet again. I'm sure it'll be sooner rather than later.
No doubt. Might be tomorrow.
Yep.
Lotta, curriculum?
We have not met.
Excellent. Matt, finance and facilities?
Not met.
And policy and planning has also not met, correct, Peter? Okay, thank you. I don't have anything from a liaison. Does anybody else have any liaison? Lotta?
Yes. CEF will be launching its first Fund the Need campaign this week to better assist the school district in meeting challenges that face the return to school, remote learning, and the imminent state budget cuts. The community will be able to directly fund any combination of 4 specific needs: enhance virtual learning, such as the tech engagement grant that we'll be approving this evening, promoting classroom innovation and experiences across all schools, such as the Milton Outdoor Classroom, that's also going to be presented, and supporting social and emotional well-being. And this will also be helping to building, the last is to building the endowment for the future, which will help cover any unexpected costs or budgets over the next several years. So if you could visit chathamedfoundation.org or check out the website or any of the social media to learn more about any of these activities that they're promoting.
Excellent. Thank you, Lotta. Any additional liaison reports? No? I think, okay, then, moving right along, I'd like to make a motion to move the minutes of the public meeting for August 10th. Peter, everybody was in attendance, correct?
Correct.
All those in favor? Oh, thanks, Matt.
That's fine.
Opposed? Abstentions? No abstentions?
Duly noted, the minutes passed 7-0, because Mr. Arnick just departed a few minutes ago.
Yep. Yes, I knew that. Thank you. Okay, so we have our first opportunity for public commentary. Hearing of the citizens during public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time, approximately 3 minutes or less. And as I mentioned earlier, I did have a few comments. We received a few emails, 9 emails related to the curriculum, anti-racism curriculum, 1 related to the swimming coach, and 1 just a general procedural question. Of the 9 emails that we received over the last couple days, let's see, 1 of them called the board ignorant, 1 of them called the board racist. My favorite, 1 of them called the Board of Education, the volunteers here, lazy. Some went on to be a little less flattering, but I'll just pick those out. At the very least, it's insulting. At the best, it's just not constructive. But here's the thing. We do not have the luxury of being insulted. We don't have the time. We have a mission. We need to open schools safely. We have 4,300 students and we have 600 staff. We cannot afford to be insulted by being called lazy. We cannot afford to spend any energy on that. We are expending every ounce of energy on getting this right, because the consequences of not getting it right are dire. So you can continue with the name calling, but I'm going to tell you now, our primary focus, our singular focus for the near future will be on one thing: opening schools safely. And by opening, I mean virtual as well as in person. So the other part that I find a little disappointing is our former students say things like, I write in support to include anti-racism education. I'm writing to tell you why we need anti-racism curriculum, and I support for the implementation of anti-racism curriculum. Now, these students are writing me from Bucknell, Villanova, NYU, Boston College, Columbia, Lehigh, Lafayette, Brown, and a host of other phenomenal schools. What I find disconcerting, and I'm kind of looking at Mike here, the superintendent, is most of these kids went K-12 in our district. There is a tremendous amount of anti-racism curriculum embedded in our school district, in our language arts, in our social studies. How are these kids getting into this school and they miss the message? So what we have committed over the last several meetings, and I'll say it again, what we have committed to do is we are going to review the curriculum. We've already reviewed it. When we have time, probably the October timeframe, we will put on a presentation and review what curriculum is currently in place, the curriculum that these students that went into these Ivies attended. We will point out where all the anti-racism curriculum is in our language arts, in our literature, in our social studies. And then we will discuss recommendations where it can be better, where we can make improvements, where we can make changes. So you don't want to wait? Too bad. You're going to have to wait. You're just going to have to wait on that one. We're going to focus on schools. Dr. LaSousa has committed to looking into the curriculum, creating a presentation to the board and the public, and I better see those numbers jump. Mr. Connor better tell me there's 300 people watching that meeting in October to understand what the curriculum is. And if we have all these kids going to these schools and they missed the lessons, we failed them. Because if it blew right by them because they were taking 6 or 7 or 8 AP classes and they missed the important lessons, well then shame on us. That can't happen. We can't offer this curriculum on anti-racism and hear things like, you better start including it. We need to implement it. We need to start from square one. We've already we've covered this at great length, and we're going to put on a lengthy presentation on reviewing what the curriculum is, and I better see every name that writes me better be watching. And then you can come back and say if we're ignorant, lazy, or if we're racists. And then maybe get on board and having it be a little bit more constructive of a conversation after we've reviewed the current curriculum and then discuss recommendations for changes in the future. So now the public is yours, Jane. Yeah, we're going to try and use the minutes, so if you could be leery of Mrs. Clark here.
For everyone that's going to speak, as a reminder, please make sure you sign in and then state your name,
I'm
please.
sorry.
And Jane Devlin. I relocated to Mendham, New Jersey, not by choice. So let me begin by expressing my appreciation and support. Am I supposed to talk with or without the mask? Yes. On. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. Reset. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation and support for all the administration and the board, and I mean all you do, including the efforts for safely and effectively educating our students during this pandemic. I support schools opening, our school district opening, for the reasons Dr. LaSousa explained in his presentation. I don't want to spend all my time that I have prepared reacting to the email letters that was just said, although I do want to say I understand and appreciate things have to be done in stages, and I support the priority of how we have to address schools opening the best way and the safest way possible now. Sometimes when you have a thought or a cause or a mission, though, because you repeatedly advance it, it doesn't mean, I'm speaking about myself, not the youth, it doesn't mean you're not cognizant that things happen in stages, because you remind people that there's still something else out there. It doesn't mean you shouldn't realize to be patient and wait your turn. I don't know if students, by their very youth, have developed the patience older adults have, but I sort of understand that. So what I want to talk about tonight and why I came in person tonight, although frankly I've been limiting my public outings since coronavirus restrictions were put in place, but I came tonight because at the last board meeting there was some mention from the board along the lines, if folks are so interested in an issue or a topic, then why aren't they here in person instead of sending letters or statements? Those statements apparently viewed as kind of long in length and therefore perhaps too laborious to read aloud.
Sorry, I just want you to pay attention to Michelle as well.
Okay. I can't say it in 1 minute, please. Okay, I'll read quick. Okay. One remedy posed was to read parts and partial of the letter aloud while assuring each board member does see the letter in its entirety. Another remedy posed, better but maybe not the most inclusive, was the suggestion that people could attend a board meeting in person, and if the capacity exceeded group or crowd limits, then folks could wait in another area until it was their turn to enter. So I came tonight in person to express my opinion that these ideas, while well-intended and perhaps even creative, are not sufficient or insufficient. By limiting who hears what at a public forum of a public meeting, or who says what, or if comments are just, for example, like tonight, extrapolated or culled from broader letters, then any open commentary is chilled. Nowadays, unfortunately, virtually everything is done virtual and in real time, including but not limited to schools, work, meetings, medical appointments, church, and even court sessions.
Can you wrap it up?
Could I come back at the
Yeah, we're going to have another session.
Let me get a
section of
natural
public
pause
commentary.
and let me come back. For example, we don't hear part
Jane,
of...
I'm sorry. Your time is up. You can come back in the second round of public commentary, please.
And you can,
Let me finish the sentence.
and you can call me. You can
Okay.
finish the sentence, but
For example, we don't hear part of a priest's sermon or just from a prosecutor and not a defense attorney in court. At part 2, I'm going to pick up from there.
Okay.
Thank you, and it's great seeing everyone.
in person.
Good evening, everyone. We are Betsy Long, co-president. I'm Laura Noonan. I'm also a co-president, and Stephanie Lukasiewicz, vice president, and we are here on behalf of the Chatham Education Association. We want to start by acknowledging the steps that have been taken into the back-to-school plans, linking the association with the administration into everything from classroom layout to PPE to Plan A versus Plan B. Dr. LaSousa started from the end of June, when we first took office, by inviting us to meetings once, sometimes twice weekly. We also want to thank Beth Grant for helping our more than 100 staff members navigate anticipation of leave under the Extended Medical Leave Act for unavailability of childcare. Behind the scenes, we are all working hard. Teachers and administrators are working on a lot of protocols and procedures to ensure that our students are as safe as possible. So much is happening on a daily basis that the public might not be aware of, and we want to thank teachers and staff for meeting the challenge head-on. Our association represents a wide range of thoughts and concerns, and we are here tonight to express them to you.
Our teachers are anxious to teach your children. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Stephanie Lukasiewicz, Vice President. Our teachers are anxious to teach your children. This is our chosen profession, our vocation, and we want to work. We echo Mike's sentiments that Chatham is home to some of the best and most passionate teachers in the state, and we will rise to the occasion to provide the best learning opportunities for our community. We can be ready, we can adapt, and we can make it work. But there are so many unknowns, and as similar districts around us go virtual, in-person instruction is becoming more and more intimidating. As of right now, we have many members district-wide who have applied for medical and/or child-related leaves. These positions, under the best of circumstances, can be challenging to fill, given the teacher shortage, and COVID only compounds the problem. Dr. LaSousa and Ms. Grant, the principals, the supervisors, they're working really hard to ensure adequate coverage for in-person learning. And while they've taken care of some of the staffing issues, some continue to remain unsolved. There are not enough teachers to fill our the positions, and not enough options to replicate the Chatham educational experience that we have worked so hard to create. Online programs and non-teaching subs will not be able to mirror the high-quality education that our professionals provide the Chatham community. Behind the scenes, teachers are working really hard to get ready for whatever the year might look like. There are science teachers planning on how to deliver AP lab instruction material on their cohort days. There are special educators and CST members ready to accommodate our learners with IEPs. There are elementary school teachers who've had to move all of their upholstered reading chairs from their classrooms and moved their own children into the district just so they can be ready for in-person instruction.
My name is Betsy Long. I am co-president with Laura. Despite these preparations, there are a myriad of questions that our members have regarding their own safety and the safety of their students. Some are uneasy with what new protocols will look like and how much time away from instruction that new hygiene protocols will take. How are our secretarial staff to keep themselves safe in our offices while maintaining the first line of greeting into our buildings? How do our custodians and maintainers learn quickly how to clean high contact and high use areas while keeping themselves safe? How do we clean musical instruments, art supplies, lab materials? Do we feel adequately prepared to answer these questions and welcome children into the buildings? And do we support the mental well-being of those members who are completely beside themselves in fear to come into the buildings every day? Some of our members are waiting for their child's daycare or school buildings, as Ms. Grant said, to shutter, and that will force their hands to have to request a last-minute childcare leave. We have some members who plan on leaving their own 10, 11, 12-year-old children at home alone to virtually learn by themselves because they can't afford childcare leave and they cannot afford to find sitters. We have some staff who can have some medical issues or might have risk factors that increase vulnerability to COVID, but do not know if it qualifies them for medical leaves. We have members who are thinking about starting families and are concerned about what risks COVID might introduce to that process. Not all of our staff have felt comfortable coming forward, given all the uncertainty coming from our state. But let us be clear. All of our teachers want to teach. All of our teachers want to work. We want to thank our community for pushing the start date back to 9/8 to allow us to develop our craft in this new world of synchronous and virtual teaching. We hope the Chatham community will support our staff in the return on the 8th. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Gianna Latore, and I'm from the Chatham Borough. I'm a rising senior here at the high school, and I'm also captain of the girls' swim team. My friends and I are here tonight to talk about the termination of our coach, but before we talk, we wanted to thank you guys for everything you're doing and how hard you're working to get us back in the building. I mean, some of us are seniors, and that's very important to us, so we appreciate all of your hard work. Just a month ago, we received the news that Coach D was asked not to return as our coach next year. After both the girls and boys teams had very successful seasons, this was really shocking to a lot of us. During his time as head coach, Coach D led both teams to various state, sectional, county, and conference titles. Clearly, this decision to terminate Coach D was not because of team performance. Instead, it was brought to the attention of this year's captains that this decision was made due to a swimmer attendance issue. Yet Coach D's attendance policy is standard with NJSIAA rules, and the attendance issue is due to a few students taking advantage of school policy. It has been unfortunate to see our coach be let go over a fixable situation, one that he was never given the opportunity to resolve. After this news came to light, the captain started a petition for Coach D's reinstatement, which now has over 673 signatures and 121 comments from alumni, parents, local coaches, and even swimmers from rival teams. The comments are very compelling, so we encourage the board to read through them. I also wanted to briefly touch on how Coach D has impacted me as a swimmer and as a person. These are words that I always imagined saying during my captain's speech at our senior year banquet, but it seems they have a purpose now. In my 10 years as a swimmer, I've swam for 2 different club teams, and I've had a wide range of coaches, so trust me when I tell you that Coach D is the best coach I've ever had. Aside from my parents, he has been the only consistent factor of my swimming career, and I am so grateful for that. I've also had many great teachers during my years as a student at Chatham, so this is not to discredit them in any way. But again, aside from my parents, I've never had an adult believe in me as much as Coach D has. And I know this is true for other swimmers on the team. With that, I respectfully urge the district to reconsider their decision to terminate Coach D. I understand that the board cannot comment on personnel issues, and I understand that it might be too late for anything to be done this year. If that is the case, please reconsider for next year, because this decision doesn't just impact the 4-year set of students on the team today. This is about the 8 years of swimmers that came before us that started the legacy of Chatham swimming, and the 8+ years of swimmers coming after us that will continue that legacy. And that's the legacy that Coach D built. And even if we don't have Coach D this year, I know what our team is capable of, and I have no doubt that we will still be successful. But it won't be the same, and it's going to be much more difficult to have that same drive and passion without our fearless leader. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kyle Beebe. I would also like to thank you for all the efforts to go ahead and reopen schools. Chatham Borough also. I have been with the high school swim team for 2 years, and there was never a question in my mind of what our attendance policy was. Our coach made it very clear to us what our expectations were of each swimmer, club or non-club, for the season. If he was released because of his attendance policy, has the attendance policy of every single coach at the Chatham High School been under the same amount of scrutiny? And let's face it, there are plenty of kids looking for an easy gym exemption, and it makes committed athletes like myself look bad. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Ava Voigt. I'm from the township. I'm a rising senior, and I also would like to thank everyone here for their continuous efforts to bring us back to school, especially in this hard time. I was also selected to be a Chatham swimming captain for the 2021 school year. My teammates and I were all recently informed of Coach Frank DiGiacomo's termination, and we were all very upset by this decision. Coach D is an amazing coach and did many great things for the high school swim team in the past. He's brought the girls' team to several state tournaments and several successful seasons. To the captain's knowledge, Coach G was let go because of his attendance policy, and that he doesn't cut any swimmer unless they reach out to him and say they're quitting. In Chatham, which is a fairly competitive town, having a team that does not cut helps students to be able to find their place in the high school. Coach G makes sure to have an extremely inclusive team, and he always makes sure to give every swimmer of any ability the opportunity to compete in meets. This is extremely important to non-club swimmers, including myself, because it gives everyone the chance to contribute to the success of the team. Coach D honestly and truthfully cares for all 80-plus swimmers on the team and even refers to everyone as a family and siblings to his own 2 sons. While a few students may have taken advantage of Coach's policy to get a gym exemption, we believe that an issue like that should have been put on the students to take responsibility for what they had done. Personally, I'm very disappointed to see a very successful, passionate, and loved coach let go because of a student accountability issue. While I'm aware that the board and Dr. LaSousa cannot comment on this issue, I respectfully ask that you please reconsider Coach D's termination and his future here at CHS. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Mari Frances Somas-Jaklowski. I use she, her pronouns, and I was a part of the 2015 graduating class and a long-time community member of Chatham Township. To the Board of Education, I am thankful for your work and what you are doing here. Thank you. I am here to reiterate and ask you again, as many others have before me, for the Board of Education of the Chathams to please look at the demands for the teachers, department supervisors, administrators, through implementing curricular reform having to do with racism in the school system. I have found a love for teaching here at Chatham High School, as well as teaching younger children outside of the school setting. The special education teachers here, as well as the quote-unquote concept teachers, were the ones that showed me how great teaching can be. And this is why I have pursued, as an adult, to be a part of an early childhood daycare school up in Massachusetts with a teaching license. It was the best 5 years of my life until I recently moved home. I was an infant teacher and also took a role as an assistant administrator. As an infant educator, we learned myself that racism is taught. In the society where we live in, where racism is built into our system of our society, we are all racist. Myself, you, and everyone here. We are the ones that can change the narrative ourselves and the people around us by actively taking a stance to dismantle our internalized racism and educate ourselves about the racism at hand. As an educator that teaches children, it is even more imperative that we teach racism at an early age. I myself feel that it is even more imperative as an educator to teach children about these concepts. From infancy, racism is learned in our world. I find it a necessity that race conversations are started and kept as the core areas of learning and are kept at the core through the child's education. In the classroom I've worked in, there were inclusive books that talked about racism, books that talked about diverse authors, books that had different cultures and foods, play toys that displayed different cultures, and baby dolls that were all different colors. and different songs that were sang about inclusion, respect, and love for one another, no matter what they look like. We are taught this to infants, 3 months to 15 months old, and they grasp the concept and ran with it. But there are many children that don't get this kind of exposure in teaching in schools or the school system that perpetuates or upholds the white standard and or a whitewashed curriculum. It is never too early to start to introduce the child to these issues and educate them about how to speak and act and be. I also worked in as an administrative assistant position in a daycare, so I understand the administrative side and need to prioritize things. I understand the juggling of 2 or more priorities that are so imperative to the school year and its function, and I know that how it looks like and how it works. And frankly, I know from personal experience that it can be done and executed with care, detail, and precision, especially when there is 1 or more priority. Having heard in previous live stream meetings that there is no time to address these demands and these issues that were presented by the Board of Ed, I was beyond frustrated. It is not a matter of time, but a matter of choice. I know this since I have juggled 4 priorities at my school, including COVID, and as one of them being race, I was able to execute it with high quality for the teachers, students, and the community. It is a choice to push it aside because it may be easier, or people in charge may not have enough time, or the fact that we don't want to get into that right now because it's too big of an issue. Can I finish it at the following? Thank you.
I guess I'll write it first. Thanks, Joe Basralian, Chatham Township. When Ms. Critchley-Weber, President Weber, you said that it won't be perfect. We know that's true, but I think we should add to that and say it will be better than just about anywhere else around. That's what we've always done as a district, thanks to the volunteerism of the board and hundreds or thousands of parents. So we know it's going to be, not perfect, but the best we can possibly get. So I've taken over the summer to just find a couple cool snippets I find in Dr. LaSouza's emails, inspiring things, just stuff I really liked, sending it to my sister and my mother, who are career educators. They send it on to their friends, and all they get back is, if only we had a superintendent like him. And I feel so good. It feels really good to know that we think we've got the best that we've got. And the reason why we do is because everyone's continually working on making it better. So I think it's fantastic to hear that as slivers of human time start to come back, and hopefully they will this year, but if not, hopefully they come back. I think figuring out what is meant by evaluation of what we do for anti-racism now, that is a really important step. If it's done well with council of professionals in this field, as I'm pretty sure we would turn to, then we can really learn a lot from that process. If it's done by non-professionals in that specific field, I think we'll be talking at cross purposes with people who have taken advantage of a tidal wave of new scholarship and new learning about what's going on in society. So if we do that evaluation well, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think if that's what we're doing first, then it's all on doing that really, really well. That's the step ahead. We don't want to make a false step with that and have everyone come back and say, well, wait a second, you didn't hire the right professionals, you didn't talk to people who are really experts in this field, and what we mean by anti-racism is not what that curriculum evaluation meant by anti-racism. I think we can do it well, especially because we're not doing it tonight, so we have time to really make that step count. And that'll be an incredible moment for this district, because I doubt many other places are even thinking about doing that now and doing it right. So I had some other comments prepared, but I'll save that for the future. If there's a possibility of having a live online component that we could hear some of the voices instead of writing, just hear their voices in under 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever it turns to, I think that would be better than having the emails come in and having to read that or not read it or read some of it. Finally thing, I worked on a trading floor with 150 people, and I was the guy in the middle. And everyone's screaming at me, cursing at me, and it hurts, but then you bounce up and you say, you know what? I'm going to just go forward and do my job and look at the content of what they're saying, even more than get my feathers ruffled. But that's what we're going to do. We'll move forward, and I think we're going to do this right. So thank you for all that you guys are doing. Thank you, Dr. LeSouza and all the staff. Thank you.
My name is Matt Marquet, and I am a graduate of the class of 2019 Chatham High School. To the board, thank you for all you're doing in starting the school year. Specifically to Jill, I'm sorry you were called those names. I'm sorry you were all called those names from the emails, the countless emails you were getting from regarding anti-racism. But I would like to recognize that these angry comments are coming from a place of hurt. It may not be your fault, but it is coming from a place of pain that was started here in Chatham when kids were forced to say the N-word in English class. It comes from a place of pain that has been boiling over because the anti-racism curriculum that you speak of just before does not exist to the extent that we would like it to. And I am speaking from experience graduating from CHS. This was quick. I'd like to just end with two quotes. One, I will be paraphrasing from your own Matt Gilfillan, who told us at the first meeting we presented these demands to keep coming back, because there were people who have presented demands like this before and then just let it fizz out. So this is why we are sending all these emails. This is why we're here. We were told to keep coming back to get real change. The second of which is from Martin Luther King Jr., and it is to address the waiting that we are undergoing to get anti-racism curriculum. It's from the letter from Birmingham Jail. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see, with one of our distinguished jurists, that justice too long delayed is justice denied. Please show us that the word wait in this context does not mean never. Thank you.
So I actually didn't come here to speak on this topic at all. My name is Utanya Horton. I've lived here a really long time. I don't usually come to the board meetings because I don't usually have anything to say. And I actually didn't come here to talk. I just came to hear what was happening with the board because I have 2 children in the district. But I have been watching the presentations and watching the live things, and as an African American, or as a black with a capital B now that we are, capital B, we got capital B, I have been watching what's been going on in Chatham and watching a large number of people talk about the experience here. And I just wanted to offer a different opinion. I actually am very concerned about anyone teaching my kids about race in school. I'm very concerned about it. I moved here to give my daughter an opportunity, a really good education, and that's exactly why I moved here. I want to teach my child about race. I think my job is to teach my child about race. And I don't want my child to have a narrative of oppression. And what I mean by that is we have to be very careful, very, very, very careful when we're teaching children about race. Because one of the things that can happen is my daughter, until all these events, until BLM came here and all these things, never felt oppressed. She did not. She felt as if everyone here was her friend. All of these people were her friends, that she was loved. Everyone cared about her. She felt a part of this community. And then people tell her that people don't like you, that people hate you. Because you get these narratives, these things that come around. And where do we get these things from? We have to be very careful what we teach our kids. We have to be very careful how we say these things. Because if you didn't feel this way all throughout the time you were in high school, if you felt everyone was your friend, that they cared about you and they loved you, and then you go off to college and then you come and someone tells you that the world is bad or prejudice or hate, prejudice is here. We look different. We're always going to have prejudice. It is going to be around. It is. I didn't say racism. I said prejudice. We're going to judge people by how they look. We are always going to we make snap judgments immediately by how people look. People think they're going to know what I was going to say, right? You wonder, you think, right? You think you know. You might think you know what my husband looks like, but you don't because he's a tall white guy. See, we make judgments every minute about who we are and what we are. And this is why I say to my children, you were fine a couple months ago, but someone comes and tells you you're not. Or some school says to you that people don't like you or this is what's wrong. We have to be careful. It's a parent's job to teach their children about race. So I understand the anti-racist curriculum, I get it, but we have to be careful. And that's why all around the news is telling you people want to look in on their kids' Zoom and all these different things because now we're getting worried. What are you teaching our children? What are you teaching them? I want to be very careful what you teach my daughter because my daughter is an African American, or black now with a capital B, whatever you want to call it, she's black. So I want to be very careful what you teach her because I don't want her to feel oppressed, that the world is against her, because when you carry that around with you, things become limited. I don't want her to be limitless. There are no limits. And if you feel like people are oppressing you, or if you feel like the world is against you, or if you feel like the country is against you, you feel oppressed. And all of a sudden, after all this, she's like looking around, wondering if people in Chatham don't like her, when she was perfectly fine, and she should never be that way. So I just ask everyone, when you're saying all these things, be careful. Just be careful about it. It's not a light topic, you know, and sometimes everyone doesn't have the same opinion. Just be careful. That's all.
Additional public comments? There's another opportunity as we get through the agenda, which will be fairly quick. I think I already addressed the swimming. I had already mentioned to the captains that we're not able to discuss personnel matters, but thank you for coming out. I had mentioned that we already received emails. I would like to just respond to Ms. Devlin, affectionately known as Aunt Jane here in Chatham. I just want to remind folks that the purpose of public comments is to ensure that the board hears what you have to say. Typically, you come to the microphone and we're here and we listen and, you know, we take notes. Because there's a pandemic, you can email us. Every board member will receive it. We get that you can't come, you know, for whatever reason, but we've made it, we made an explicit decision to come back early. We came back as early as June so that people can participate. And I'm not saying that, you know, other districts are good or bad, but we came back early. We're asking 600 staff members and 4,300 students to come into this building. The 9 of us are here. You can come, you can email us. We're not stifling anything. Every board member will get your email. Or you can come and talk to us in person. So, you know, we're not changing the narrative, we're not changing the rules, we're here. And we get it, there's a pandemic, so email us. Every one of us, I mean, I don't want to tell my board's personal stories, but I take care of my 90-year-old mother. I'm sitting here. Sal has made it public that he takes care of his mother-in-law. He's here. So we get it. If you can't come, I get it. There's a lot going on. You don't want to risk anything. Just email us. Every board member will get a copy. They will read it. I don't think there's any. Oh, Mike, did you have, other than Mr. Bazaralian's comments and compliments to you, is that what you're going to comment on? How great Mike is?
I was looking him up so he could text my wife. That'd be helpful to me. Well, thank you, Mr. Bazralian, again for your kindness. I just did want to mention, and I've mentioned this before, that it's been a pleasure to work with the Education Association and the teacher representatives that spoke earlier. They've been communicative and collaborative, and we've tried to address issues and challenges that we're facing. The truth is, of course, that nobody has all the answers to what we're dealing with, and nobody is able to guarantee anything in terms of how it will turn out or what's the best path forward. I can say that the governor has told us that we should open schools. The Department of Health released new guidance and a new matrix that I sent out to everyone on Thursday, if you clicked on the hyperlink, that looks at the metrics of positivity rate and transmission rate and so forth, and gives you a color code about whether you can open schools or what you might consider when you open schools. And we're in the low category right now. So the Department of Health has indicated that we should try to open schools. So I feel like it's my job to try to find a way to do that and do it as safely and as appropriately as possible. As our departments of health locally have told us, there's no way to eliminate all risk. So what we're trying to do is create environments that are as safe as possible for all of our staff and all of our students, and do so with the recognition that being in school in person is better than being at home behind a screen on a Google Meet or a Zoom. Being in school is better for kids. And I've gone back and forth with other superintendents about these kinds of questions. One thing that I would share to distill it in a way that's a little bit, maybe it's primitive, but if you look at all the numbers and all the stats nationally, statewide, there's a much greater risk and likelihood that a student would die by suicide in our school district than die by COVID. And obviously we don't want any student ever to pass, but you have to weigh the other detrimental, at least potential detrimental effects of not having students in school. And I say that not just in the intuitive sense that when students are at home, they're more likely to be isolated or more likely to be alone. I say that knowing how often it is that we have a staff member who sees or spots something in a student that is of concern and brings that concern forward. Or we have a student who confides in a staff member, like a student assistance counselor, that they're in crisis. And I know how often it is that we then work with that student, we screen that student, we sometimes refer to that student to an outside health professional. Sometimes that student needs in-person, residential or inpatient or outpatient treatment. But these are things that happen regularly when a school year takes place and when students are in school to be connected to the adults around them and to their classmates. So there are no easy solutions to anything, and we have to weigh all of our decisions about what our mission is as a school system and what we think is best and most appropriate. The teachers have been terrific. I wouldn't trade our staff for any staff in New Jersey, and I thank them for everything they've done to get us to this point. I do want to say something about the curricular issues and anti-racism. First, I'll say, because you pointed at me, Ms. Weber, our curriculum changes every year, and every year we try to get better. And if a student graduated, say, in 2017, it means they were in 4th or 5th grade in 2010. And if we implemented changes in the 4th or 5th grade between 2010 and now, a decade's worth of curricular changes, a student who graduated in 2017 would never know it. So part of this issue has to be to take a comprehensive look of what we've done and what we've introduced. Some people have emailed me about the 1619 project. That is new. That didn't exist in 2015. I started reading Kendi's book about how to be an anti-racist. I just looked it up to see when it was published because I had no idea. It was 2019. So I couldn't have, asked Ms. Chase to read that book 4 years ago because it wasn't something that existed. So my stabs at anti-racism when I was a social studies teacher in 2003 involved having students listen to Public Enemy, which is a band that most of the students maybe never heard of, but an important one, and Living Color, and read Frederick Douglass and others. But there are new and more just updated, modern, contemporary scholarship now in this area that just didn't exist even 5 years ago. So I just bring that up to say there's an expression among teachers, and it goes something like, it doesn't really matter what you teach. What matters is what they're learning. If there's a disconnect with what our goals are in terms of teaching and educating and addressing issues involving anything, but our students are not walking away with what our intentions are in terms of the teaching, then that's a point of reflection, and we need to do better, because we need alignment between what we are aiming to impart or instill in students and what they're walking away with. I'm grateful that every student that communicates with us is so articulate, but we have work to do in terms of narrowing the disconnect or eliminating the disconnect and aligning what we intend to be teaching with what students are learning. At least it appears that way from some of the comments. That's all there were a few other comments that came in about staffing and other issues, and I can respond to those, and you can share them with the rest of the board.
I'll share them after the meeting. I don't have cell service. Does anybody else, so we've closed the public commentary. Does anybody else on the board want to make a comment? Too lazy? Too soon for that one? Okay. At least I got a chuckle. See, that's why I like to meet in person. That would have fell flat on Zoom. Okay, so we're going to move along. We will have another opportunity for public comments at the end, and this will go fairly quick because we get the agendas over the weekend. They're posted on Fridays, so folks have a chance to look at them. So just just for time, and we're going to move it over to personnel. Would you mind?
Nope. I want to move action items A1 to 14 on the regular agenda, and then A5 and 15 to 25 on the agenda.
I'll second that. Does anybody have any questions for Beth? I mean, most of it's leave replacements. Our addendums are getting larger than our agendas. It's the times. Okay. No additional questions on personnel? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? There you go, Peter.
Duly noted, A1 through A14, and addendum item A5, A15 through 25 passes 7-0.
Excellent, thanks. Matt, over to finance and facilities.
Yes, I'd like to move action items B1 to 8 on your regular agenda, and then B9 on your addendum. Second. And I'm going to hand it off to Ms. Kenny to talk about B9.
Yes, B9 has to do with the Chatham Education Foundation, and it is pleased to fund 3 grants to benefit the school district of the Chathams. The details of the grants are as follows. The first grant is using technology for engagement will improve online learning at all the grades in the district through effective lesson design and increased student engagement. The grant of $12,300 provides unlimited access to 3 different online instructional technology resources: Edpuzzle, Screencastify, and Padlet. These resources give teachers from pre-K through high school the technology to build more effective lessons and actively engage with students online. Whether working remotely or in a live setting, the resources will foster interactive learning. The second grant, Clear Masks for Clear Communication, in the amount of $3,300, purchased 200 reusable, washable masks with clear fronts for various teachers and staff across the district. Students can see their teachers' lips and facial expressions with these masks. As a result, the clear masks support communication, effective teaching, and social emotional well-being among the staffs and students. The third grant approved by the board 2 weeks ago is Take Learning Outdoors, an outdoor classroom at Milton Avenue School. This grant funds $16,000 towards a permanent outdoor classroom at Milton Avenue School, and the Milton Avenue PTO funded the remainder. Milton Ave was the only elementary school without an outdoor classroom. Now students will benefit from the positive impacts gained from outdoor learning, in addition to having an outdoor space for classes during the pandemic. Finally, as we'd like to thank the donors for supporting Chatham Education Foundation, and it was their generous contributions that helped the students and teachers of the district retire, especially in these difficult times.
Thank you, Lotta. Peter, I know the construction is underway over at Milton. I walked by it.
The construction at Milton is, I'm going to say, over 90% all done. The pavers are installed, and it looks like the earth that was disturbed has topsoil. It hasn't been seeded yet as of today.
Okay.
So it's just about all done.
Okay, so this is a phenomenal gift from the CEF. As
Yeah, it looks
all of those are.
really nice.
It looks fantastic. If anybody has a chance to go behind Milton to check it out, it's between the building and the playground or Milton Pond area. Peter, so they can be probably using that by October?
Using it for the start of school.
Okay.
It's, like I said, it's almost done. They just, until the grass grows, we hope that they use the 2 paths that lead to the outdoor classroom and don't walk on the dirt.
9 years later, have no idea how nervous I get when you say it's almost done.
What? Go take a look. I mean,
I'm just saying. History. How many times have you said it's almost done? Oh, but we forgot the permit.
I could go. Well, there is no permit involved. I could go finish up on this one in the afternoon.
I might take you up on that. Okay, very good. Any other questions? Comments? No. Okay, so finance and facility. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Duly noted. B1 through B8 and addendum item 9 passes 7-0.
Excellent. Over to you, Lotta, for curriculum.
Yes, I'd like to move action item C1 to C3 on the main agenda, and then C4 on the addendum.
Second.
School calendar. Okay. So just want to point out the school calendar changes. September 8th is the first day of school. November 5th and 6th are now regular days, and June 18th will be the last day of school. Will we be able to post that?
Yes.
Soon, so folks can plan accordingly? Okay. Any questions on the curriculum items? Curriculum? Excellent. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? There we
Duly
go.
noted. Agenda item C1 to C3, addendum item C4 for the calendar change, approved 7-0.
Excellent. Okay, and I'm going to move policy. I'd like to move items D1 in policy for its second reading adoption. Matt, second that. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Duly noted. Item D1, which was updated on the addendum, passes 7-0.
Okay. Board business. Anybody have any new items they want to discuss?
I just have a question.
Can you just pull the mic
about
over,
the
Michelle?
change? Hold on, I must just rip that thing off. About the change in the calendar, I'm just putting a plug in for our college seniors who have had our rising seniors who've had a difficult time not being able to see colleges in the spring due to the pandemic. Many families plan to use that teacher convention time to go on college visits, probably now more than ever. I'm going to ask that the high school administration carefully looks at the policy for absenteeism for our seniors and gives as much flexibility for these kids to be able to visit schools. Schools are limiting numbers of kids that can come on campus. There's going to be a lot in front of these kids, and we want to make sure that they are making informed decisions as to where they go when they leave Chatham. So this change in the calendar might impact those students. I don't want any student who's made plans to visit a college at that time to be penalized due to the calendar change. And I just want to dovetail on something that Jill said about public commentary. I've been on the board, I've sat here for many years. I find what's happening right now is people are hiding behind their computers, and the tone of the emails is what's offending. It's not the content, it's not the message. It's easier to write it than to come up here and say it. I think if someone was asked to come here and say it, they wouldn't say we were lazy. They wouldn't call us racist. So I'm asking, or ignorant, or whatever. I'm just asking people out there, we want to hear from you. We'll always read and listen. read it twice, maybe read it out loud, and make sure that it's what you want to say before you send it.
Any other board business from anybody? No? No, good, okay. So we have our second opportunity for public commentary. If anybody would like to get up, that'd be great. They've already signed in, right, Peter?
Yes, but I would like them to sign in again, please.
Oh, okay, if you wouldn't mind signing in again then. Thanks, swim team captains.
So I'm going to begin where I left off.
State your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Mari Francis. I live in the Chatham Township. It is not a matter of time, but a matter of choice. I know that since I have juggled 4 priorities at my school as an assistant administrator, including COVID and including anti-racism curriculum, that we have been able to execute each with high quality for teachers and students and community. It is a choice to push it aside, as it may be easier for people to say that they not have enough time, or they don't want to get into it, or that it's too big of an issue to tackle. Having attended Chatham High School, I did not once come across a textbook that taught me about Emmett Till or Juneteenth or Claudette Colvin, let alone what systemic racism or microaggressions are. And if this something did come up, it was a 1 or 2 day discussion in a class. A book with a derogatory word for a Black person was a required reading in a classroom where most teachers were teaching us to perpetuate the racist language by saying it out loud, and the ideals and modes that our society keeps perpetuating. This was very frustrating to me. And at the time, to be completely honest, I was just very uncomfortable during my enrollment at CHS. This is because I was not taught about systemic racism and racist language and the perpetuation of it, yet I knew it was still wrong. I was even more frustrated and very concerned when I would hear that my Black and Latinx friends would be the butt of jokes or called racial slurs that would go unchecked or brushed aside by administration. At my college, I learned more and more about racism in our country and in our school system. I got more and more frustrated with my alma mater, knowing from what I had been through. We need more representation in the school system and a detailed and inclusive history, more discussion about systemic racism, more anti-racist trainings for teachers and administrators, more teachings about New Jersey and New Jersey suburbs in particular, and how they played and continue to play a role in exacerbating systemic racism. We need more positive teaching of Black history in the Black community, more inviting guest teachers to present topics and facilitate discussions in the classroom, more thoroughly investigating racially charged incidents of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, less silencing of a demographic by not reading emails in their entirety at public meetings, more listening and action to the people who are asking for these changes. Yes, it is very important that the school focuses on COVID because it is a life and death situation that we are dealing with. Racism is a life and death situation that your Black and brown students have to face beyond your school walls. You have the opportunity to change that narrative and to educate our students, to create a world where everyone is treated with dignity, respect, regardless of the color of their skin. Thank you.
Jane Devlin, Aunt Jane. The issue I speak on is about reading or not the letters publicly or by extrapolating from them. And yes, there are sensible and logical reasons why folks are emailing statements for open record versus attending in person. For example, many of the writers are college students and alumni while still calling Chatham home, live elsewhere in dormitories, other cities. Failing to read letters into a record, any letters, not just the ones from the youth, failing to read letters into record or by pruning them may not mute voices, but it certainly quiets them to a whisper. And this quieting pertains to anyone that may be writing into the board about any matter. Moreover, if the public is denied full information of a statement designed to be part of a public commentary, then miscommunication or misinformation even confusion may result. To close, I also want to point out sometimes it's upon hearing something in public commentary that causes someone to think again or weigh in. I know for myself, I have attended meetings here and other meetings, heard full statements on matters which before listening to those public statements, I may not have been inclined to speak up, whether that be pro or con. However, after hearing a public statement, I stood up in queue to get to the microphone. So the board or its proxies, when reading letters in full and aloud, is the public microphone, especially during these COVID times. That is different than saying the board sees all those letters, which I know you do, and you read them privately, which I know you do. It's a different issue for different times. Thank you very much again for letting me finish the statement. I'm going to re-sign in.
Good evening. I was suffering from school board meeting withdrawal. Thank you for coming back.
I know you need no introduction. Introduce yourself.
Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. First things first, I agree with Ms. Clark. Sitting behind a keyboard, you all know I think my views on social media. Sitting behind a keyboard is cowardly and it's corrosive, and it shouldn't happen. I want to thank you for implementing or re-implementing the live meetings. This is the way it should be done. People should show up in public and state their case, and you're exactly right. They might modulate their speech a little bit. It's just too tempting when you're sitting behind a keyboard to say things that you really should reconsider before you say them. Second thing is I don't have any dog in this fight, but I am glad that school is opening. I think that kids need to be in school. I think that we have to be ready to fail if that's the case. And I hope that the finger pointing and the I told you so's will be kept to a minimum. If it doesn't work, we have to be flexible. I hope it will work, but we have to realize that we're not in charge and that we don't have all the answers. There is no certainty here, and when there are answers, there are no good answers. So I hope that it is a success. We're going to try. I'm sure you're trying your hardest. Ms. Weber, I want to thank you for reading the Riot Act to the demanders. This board has a right and an obligation to set priorities. One crisis at a time, please. I'm sure that the demanders want to strike while the iron is hot, so to speak, but unfortunately, it's going to have to be a back burner issue. And for them to, I think that perhaps some of the students ought to lose a little bit of their moral vanity and realize that you have put in countless hours on this and that you have something bigger to deal with at the present time than what their demands are. So thank you for all you're doing. I appreciate it, and we're a better community for it.
I could mention him again. I do think that it's Joe Basralian from Chatham Borough. I do think that what he said from the room, to me, was the most impactful thing today, is that there's been so much new, not new scholarship, but a lot of scholarship, a lot of people coming forth in recent years and decades that we were not educated on. I can guarantee that nobody in this room who are about my age, a little younger, a little older, we don't know really what we're talking about with this topic. Some people may have gone on to big courses of study on it, but what Dr. L'Souza said is that about having so much more and better and truer and more objective and many more voices and many more resources now than we had 5, 10, and certainly more than 20 plus years ago since we were all in school. That is true. That's why I brought the books. We have jobs, we volunteer like crazy, we're too busy to read maybe, or maybe people read a ton. We do want to educate ourselves more, or we're never going to be able to talk to people who are 20 and 25-year-olds who know a lot more than we do about what's been done and learned lately. So I'm glad that we continually update the curriculum. I totally agree with the speaker who said we have to be careful. So we have to proceed in a professional way. I also have to comment that the speakers, there's no one who's cowardly sitting behind a keyboard. Yes, people say things behind a keyboard they won't say in public. The people who are writing in are in college. I mean, they're all over the country. It's really not fair to say they have to, come back from Baltimore and Pennsylvania to come in to speak. The other thing is, what I start to hear is that if we only focus on the names we're called, which is right, we shouldn't be called names. If we only focus on that we're missing content, and we're basically tone policing people to a certain extent. We're basically exercising we are exercising privilege by saying just because we don't like the way it comes across, we don't have to worry about it, or we don't have to deal with it now. Boy, and we know we'll deal with it soon. Thank you, Dr. Weber. But to say it's not a top priority now, we have to remember it hasn't been a top priority for 400 years in the United States, and finally there is a greater awareness, and there is a greater urgency now. So I would just urge you and all of us as peers, let's really dig in and see what this is about. I've learned so much. It's incredible. It's incredible that I didn't know what I feel like I know now. I put myself in a personal course of study in the past 5 years, read about 45 books, talked to all different communities of people. There is seriously, seriously important work that we can do, and I'm so glad we're here together in person with leadership like we have and the professional staff that we have to do it. So thanks for the extra 3 minutes.
Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken?
Jane Devlin. I just want to add a postscript, please, and it somewhat brings to reality my point. I do agree with the last statement that Bill said, that in-person dialogue is always, in my opinion, preferable to letter writing. In-person meetings are better than virtual. But in dovetailing what Joe said, those letters have not been written anonymously, and that's different than maybe hiding behind a keyboard. I can't weigh in about the negative statements that Jill read from some of those letters. I'm not responding to that, but I do want to respectfully point out one reason I can't weigh in is I don't know the content that those words were said in the fullest scope in the letter. And finally, here's an example of being somewhere, hearing the full statement, in this instance Bill's and Joe's, which then provoked me to come up and comment in open public about something that was said. If the letters are not read in its entirety, it doesn't give the people a chance to respond to them, whether that's them writing the board, whether that's writing a letter to the editor of CAP, or whether that's deciding in some way they're going to make their way in person at the next Board of Ed meeting and come to the real microphone. Thank you again.
Just want to remind the board we have an executive session. So we'll try and make it brief, but unfortunately, life goes on. So thank you for volunteering the hundreds of hours, but I'm going to ask you to volunteer a little bit more. I know it's late, but I'm going to ask you to stick around even though... What? Right in here. Action will... Mike, will action be taken? Yes. Action will be taken. Oh, that's too tight. It's too... All right, we'll go in the faculty room or the C gym, or faculty room is fine. We can spread out in there enough.